Well, it is, again, never boring with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Brad Marchand gets suspended just about 5 to 10 minutes before I started this recording. We're going to go into that and why I think it was a bit light with the NHL. And yes, for those that are on YouTube, I have my brand new setup. This is my first time recording on my PC. If the audio sounds weird, first off, please let me know. I'm going to be doing some more editing, I think, to it in Audacity and a couple other audio platforms as well. But we also have to get to, full game preview against the Ottawa Senators on Thursday. Plus, just a thought, I think, on why some Penguin fans are getting it a little wrong with, the retaliation stuff. That's all coming up right after this drop.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, welcome to this Wednesday evening episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. As I'm recording on my PC, it looks so weird I feel like I'm a lot closer to this screen than I was with my Mac. I feel like when I was on my Mac, it was a little further back than my Mac is. For those that are on YouTube, my Mac is right here. So, just changing up. I feel like I like this setup a lot more. Again, if there are audio issues or anything, feel free to send me a message on my social medias, or just leave a review or something like that on YouTube or on Apple or whatever. But a lot to get to for today's show. Let's start off with the Brad Marchand stuff. I know I touched on it on Tuesday, obviously. So, the Department of Player Safety has officially announced their ruling: 6-game suspension for Marchand after he swung his stick basically at Tristan Jarry's face, and then he punched him right in the helmet. My first thought once I saw it, I think it's weak. And if you want to send a message to someone like this, and I understand why he's so talented. He's a top 10 to top 15 player in hockey. But if you want to send a message to say to someone like, okay, you can't do this again, you got to throw the book at them. 6 games, well, that's big for NHL standards. Don't get me wrong. It absolutely is. That's still not enough for someone that's been suspended, almost 10 times now, if not a little bit more. I think, the league is doing themselves a disservice, by allowing this stuff to continue to happen. I don't think Brad is going to learn anything from this. We all know the kind of player that he is. Is he talented? Yes. But he's also a troll. That is exactly who Brad Marchand is. He tries to get under your skin. He wants you mad online. And when you do get mad online, he benefits from it because he sees obviously that you're mad. And he was trying to do that with Tristan Jarry last night. I know a couple times, with throwing the puck over, I think that got him that got Jarry a little mad, but it was also kind of funny, right? But then he's kind of trolling Sidney Crosby, not allowing him to go get a new stick. Okay, that's kind of weirdo Bush League behavior, but we'll allow it, right? It's kind of funny at the time too. But then, towards the end of the game, it's all over, and this all boils down to him losing his mind, and he just takes stupid swings at one of the best goaltenders in hockey. So, at the end of the day, I would have given him 10 to 15, and if he would have gotten a 15-game suspension, he would have had to forfeit, I think, a little over $1 million of his salary. So, I personally wish, the league would have done that because, for as much as we all harp on Tom Wilson, and rightfully so, he's one of the dirtiest players in the league, since he got that 20-game suspension, outside of the Artemi Panarin situation, which was really bad, don't get me wrong, he really has not had another hit that's even come close to anything like that. It actually seems like he's making an effort to clean himself up a little bit, just like Matt Cook did. Remember, when Cook got the book thrown at him, I want to say that was 2010, 2011, Mario Lemieux and Ray Shur, they released a statement saying, hey, we agree with this suspension. He needs to change his game or he's out of here. They didn't try to fight it. And, I think the Capitals probably, they didn't release a statement, but they probably said internally, dude, you keep this up, we're not going to keep you around for the long haul. Kudos to him a little bit. He's actually cleaned up his act, at least lately, where he's not getting suspended At least not this year yet. I mean, it's baby steps for him. But, for Marchand, this is the second time that he has been suspended this year. Remember, early on in the season, 3-game suspension for a slew foot. Now it's 6 because he can't help himself at the end of the game. And, he's had a lot of spearing penalties. He's gotten suspended, I think, once or twice for that. A couple other headshots I think he's gotten suspended for. This is a prime repeat offender. And the fact that he is still not getting the book, I don't really understand that, at least in my opinion. I know some Bruins fans out there and some other people around the NHL were trying to say that Jarry started it by swinging his stick at Charlie Coyle. The two they're not mutually exclusive. I mean, sure, Jarry probably shouldn't have done it, but that's not what set Brad Marchand off. He was mad that the team was losing. He was mad that he wasn't doing anything, and he took his frustrations out on a goaltender who made a really nice save. And again, the game was over at that point. So lose me with the benefit of the doubt for Brad Marchand. Anyone that's defending him, you're showing your whole ass. I think is the way to say it. I really don't get that. At least in my opinion, the Penguins skated away with the victory. And I'll say this here too. I'll go into it a little bit more in the next segment. These Penguins fans, and this is not just on social media. This is on Sports Talk Radio and everything, message boards, of course. But these fans that they get mad that the team is undisciplined. Back in 2012, well, why aren't they skating away? The Flyers are just trying to get under their skin and all that. But yet you want the Penguins to go after Marchand after he made himself look like an idiot when the game is over, and you want to risk one of your best players getting hurt. To me, that's just BS. I mean, that solves absolutely freaking nothing. We all saw what happened when this team traded for Ryan Reeves a few years ago. Jim Rutherford literally said to the media after they won the 2017 Cup, yeah, we're looking to add some toughness. I didn't like how Sid and Gino were pushed around in that playoff series. Well, I mean, look what happened. He literally did not do a damn thing in the season, and then he was traded for Derek Brassard because Mike Sullivan knew that there was no use for this player in his starting lineup. So, to me, I think it's, it's just, I don't know. I guess I'm trying to put it into words. But I think people are being a lot of hypocrites, I should say, is the word that I'm looking for. Nothing, I know Chris Letang grabbed Brad and, he pushed him aside a little bit, but, you really want Sidney Crosby to chase the guy down the tunnel? I mean, I don't. I mean, Sid and Brad are already good friends anyway. So that was never going to happen. And I don't subscribe to the notion that the Penguins need payback or anything like that. This is not old-time hockey. I'm going to get into Tyler Kennedy's video coming up here in this second segment because I saw that was released on social media. Gonna get into also what some of the beat reporters, are writing about this on social media and, why I disagree with a couple of them as well. But, I wanted to make that point clear, as we end this first segment here. So again, coming on to the next segment to get my more thoughts on just, why it's just a lot of backwards thinking. And of course, we're going to get into a full preview for the game against the Ottawa Senators. Now, before we get to that though, this is the time of the year that I've pretty much given up on all of my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right, thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, well, you are missing out on one of the best Built Bars out there. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar, though. They are a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. They're low-calorie, high-protein. You can replace candy bars with them as well. A typical candy bar has upwards of 300 calories, but most Built Bars, only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar and 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. There's so many great flavors with mint brownie, coconut almond, and new for the month of February, white chocolate cookies and cream. They're all delicious, and there's new flavors coming out all the time. So you can go to built.com, use promo code LOCK15, and get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, so we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Hodes. Follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow this show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. So, seeing a lot of, for those that are not on Twitter, and I know a lot of people that listen to the show are not, if you're not, you're saving yourself a world of pain, trust me, because there are a lot of takes on this website that, it's a bit much, but, I'm tired of some of these, some of the beaver reporters. It's just like, well, I'm not a Neanderthal, but the Penguins should have done this. And it's like, no, they shouldn't have, because the game is over. And I tweeted about this, to my followers on Twitter, earlier on today. I'll say it for you all here that do not follow me. The best thing the Penguins can do, you're up 4-2. There's 20 seconds left, right? Brad Marchand does something stupid like that. Okay, sure. Give him a couple whacks. Don't go try to fight him or anything like that. You know what you do? You laugh at him and say, hey, dude, look at the scoreboard. We just freaking kicked your butts. So, and you're going to get suspended. So, ha, ha, ha. Just laugh in his face. That's all the players need to do. And, kudos to the Penguins, because they didn't get involved in those kind of scrums. And this is exactly what Mike Sullivan has been preaching ever since he took over in 2015-16. I don't think that's being mentioned enough when we talk about this situation. When Sully took over, what was his mantra? Still is today, right? 2 words: just play. And that's been instilled in the Penguins, excuse me, for the last 6 to 7 years now. And the Penguins of old, back in 2012 and 2013, where they would just melt under Dan Byslma when a player would just the opposing team would just look at them, basically. That's well gone. This is not 2012 with the Philadelphia Flyers, where the Penguins were just being complete and utter morons when just a Flyer would make a big hit. They would go after them with what? Because Dan Byslma, he did not have this team disciplined at all. But with Mike Sullivan, the team doesn't take the bait, and that goes for on the ice and excuse me, off the ice. Look what Tristan and Mike said to the media after the game, and then this morning. Tristan said, heat of the moment thing. I don't really care that much. Just hope he's okay or whatever like that. And on other teams, players would have blasted him. Imagine what Drew Doughty would say if that happened to someone on the Kings. Matthew Tkachuk, I'm sure Connor McDavid would have had some words if something happened on the Oilers. A whole bunch of other players who I'm sure have no problem speaking up. But you know what? Tristan was like, what? I'm not going to say anything. And Mike Sullivan was the same way. He's like, it's an emotional game. We skate away from this kind of nonsense. And he didn't take the bait when he was asked about it. Again, both Tuesday night and Wednesday afternoon after practice in Boston before the team flew to Ottawa. And excuse me, that just goes to show, how much this really is Mike Sullivan's team. And he does not want them, to stray from the path and to get back, to the ways that we saw from the Penguins, all those years ago, where they were undisciplined. And it's funny because, some of those same writers back then were saying, well, the Penguins are so undisciplined, someone's got to be better with them with this regard. But now you're telling them to be undisciplined because Brad Marchand was just an idiot at the end of the game. You can't have it on one end of the spectrum and then on the other end of the spectrum, right? I think you gotta pick a side with that one. I know I'm probably, I guess, in the minority with some of the fan base just because I don't subscribe to that old time hockey stuff. I don't think you need to answer the bell in quotation marks or, the code as well. I was perfectly fine with Penguins not doing anything there, I watched Tyler Kennedy's video. I can maybe put a link to it in the description box for YouTube. And I understand what he's saying. I love the guy. He played for the Penguins for so many years. He talked about how, playing against Detroit and Philadelphia, how he was a lot more scared to play Philly because even though they weren't as good, you're walking into that building and it's going to be a gunfight every time compared to Detroit where, it wasn't as big of a rival. But, TK, I'll also say this, the Red Wings were a better team. So I feel like I would have feared them more than a team like Philly because I know they had decent teams back then, but were any of those teams actual cup contenders? Even the year they made the final against the Blackhawks, I never thought that team was going to win. But I think a lot of fans, especially still in this fan base, are out of touch with today's NHL. And it's just I don't think the question why didn't the Penguins retaliate should be the focus of the Marchand. it's peak NHL for why that is. And, I know I spent the first 15 minutes of the show talking about it, but I really wanted to get this point across to all of you and just, give you all my thoughts on it because, I am kind of sick and tired of seeing these takes. And, it's funny how, people also, you're not allowed to criticize Jim Rutherford for what he did after the Cup wins, but, you're going to criticize Mike Sullivan for not having his players answer the bell, again in quotation marks, for something that they literally didn't need to answer the bell for. Even in the NFL, usually when a quarterback takes a cheap shot, the linemen, they'll help him up. They're not going to, do a lot of, brawls or anything like that. Sometimes you do see them because, again, I understand, they're standing up for their teammate and stuff like that. But, I'm not going to question Sully and especially Sidney Crosby's response to retaliation. The banners live forever. The reason why they won those cups, or a big reason, is because this team was disciplined and they stayed on the task, and they played through everything. And I know a lot of teams are going to try to bully the Penguins. The Capitals try to do it all the time, and it's not even just Tom Wilson. TJ Oshie has a history of kind of being, dirty at times. John Carlson. Well, I shouldn't even say John Carlson. Garnett Hathaway, a couple other players. Obviously, Boston, they have a lot of big bodies they'll throw around. Philly at times can play some, heavy hockey. The Islanders, especially with their little identity line of Clutterbuck, Zizekas, and Martin, though, that team is not that good this year. But still, this is, it's just, the Penguins, every time, even after these games, even after they lose, they come out of it, they talk about whatever happened, but they don't ever speak about, how we lost due to like physicality being an issue. That's just, Mike Sullivan doesn't see that as something that, bothers him. And I know that Ron Hextall and Brian Burke may be sitting up there being like, what the hell, man? Why didn't anyone retaliate? But, go ask Mike Sullivan why they didn't retaliate a few years ago when they won back-to-back cups. That's the proof is in the pudding, as they like to say. So just wanted to spend the first, segment, I guess, basically almost the two segments, talking about that, especially with the suspension, and just giving my thoughts overall on why I thought the Penguins' response to Marchand was just fine, and how I think, some of the fans' outcries for not giving him karma. It's just, I think it's kind of, I don't know, it's just not there, at least to me. But coming up in the next segment, we're going to preview the game against Ottawa on Thursday, and we're going to have a couple injury updates, especially with Evgeny Malkin. Got some really good news on him for you all. I'm going to share coming up here in a couple minutes. But before we do that, BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs right to the big game in a couple of weeks. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live, real-time updates, and, of course, current games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season for all sports. That is BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, welcome back to this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can also follow the show's Twitter, _Penguins. So big news today for Evgeny Malkin. So he has been activated off of COVID protocol. He will not be eligible to play in Ottawa on Thursday. That's due to Canada's COVID rules. There's also only going to be 500 fans available for that game against the Senators. That's due to, the Ottawa's COVID restrictions. But, still big news that Gino is back that early. So it looks like, thank God he didn't have too bad of symptoms. I think he will be a lock to play on Sunday in Newark. He'll probably get a couple practice days in. He'll be good to go. So probably just one more game we're looking at without Evgeny Malkin. So only in 2 more game absences. But, thank God that he is okay. So, as I said, the Penguins will be playing Ottawa. It looks like Matt Murray will be getting the start. And you know what? Good for him, man. He's really played well. I think, especially after he came back. I'm on a money puck right now, if, my beautiful PC wants to load here. And I'm looking down to see here, Matt Murray, he's making a little bit of a comeback. 14 games played this season, 5.7 goals saved above expected, 914 save percentage, 2.72 goals against average. This is a player that I will always root for. I don't care what team he plays for. I think some people in the fan base treated him like absolute crap for no reason, just because he lost, Marc-Andre, because he beat out Marc-Andre Fleury for his job or something like that, and people just held that against him. I don't really get why people did that, but I guess it happened for whatever reason. But excuse me, he's just a player that he's been through so much already. His dad passed away a couple of years ago. I think that really impacted his play. But, coming back from injury, and he was also sick for a bit this season, he's really starting to turn it on. And, I'm really excited to hopefully get Murray versus Jari for the first time on Thursday. This will also be, again, Matt Murray's first time playing the Penguins since he got traded. Overall, Ottawa's line, I mean, they played Carolina pretty well on Tuesday. It was a 4-0 game for a little bit. And then Carolina was making a comeback. They actually only lost 4-3. They were able to make it 4-3 with about a minute left, and they weren't able to tie the game. But this is the Senators team. They've been playing a bit better as of late. Brady Tkachuk with Tim Stützle on the first line. Formanton on the second line with Nick Paul. Austin Watson's on the third line with Max Sanford. Chris Tierney on the fourth line. He actually scored in that game against Carolina. Obviously, Stützle and Tkachuk, those are their two best forwards. Tkachuk was very good against the Penguins the last time. As was Stützle. I should say that. He was an animal all over the ice. And for whatever reason, the Penguins have had their hands full. Excuse me, with the Senators this year. They've played them very tough in both meetings. Remember, up in Ottawa the first time, this was when the Penguins were struggling. And, I believe the loss was 5-3, 6-3, something like that. Penguins were able to beat them the second time in Pittsburgh. That game looked like a blowout until the third period when the Penguins took the foot off the gas. And, that's going to be something that, they're going to have to preach to do better for this game. This is still one that I think the Penguins should win. Though, again, they just beat Carolina at home. So, they're a team that's, again, they're playing better right now, even though they're not that good. I do think this is a team that plays a bit better than their record. Tomas Chabot on the top pairing, with Nikita Zaitsev. Brandstrom is going to be a really good player, I think, at some point. Underlying numbers-wise, it's still not great, I should say, for Ottawa. 46.5% of the expected goals, 47% of the actual goals, -9 goal differential. They only have 46.5% of the shot attempts at 5v5. Going on to some more numbers here. I love that the PC is showing it's so much easier for this. Their goals for per 60, 2.43, and then goals against per 60, 2.7. So a little bit of a difference there. Again, though, I know there's not going to be a lot of fans there. There's obviously the storyline of Sidney Crosby potentially scoring his 500th goal in basically an empty arena. I think that would suck. I wish he could hopefully do it in front of home fans in Pittsburgh because, he's so close to get another milestone for his historic career. But, if it happens, good for him because, he's the second, of all active players, he has the second most goals in the league right now behind the greatest goal scorer of all time, in Alex Ovechkin. So, this is still going to be a tough game. Ottawa, I wouldn't say they play boring, but, they're fast. They have some skilled players. They especially, again, Stützle, Tkachuk. Chabot was really good in that last matchup. They just didn't get the goaltending. I thought the Penguins, and they outplayed them for, I guess, spurts, but they didn't outplay them for the full 60 minutes that I expected them to. Even, I know it's at PPG, but, that's still a team that the Penguins, they should have been able to dominate in that one. Remember, I believe that was a 5-1 game going into the third period, and then they almost blew it. So we'll have to see. But that does it for this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I really appreciate all of you listening to this one. Again, let me know if there's any audio issues or something like that. Again, I'm going to be doing some editing and all that jazz. And, just for all you on YouTube, this is my new little setup here. I had to clean up my living room here at least a little bit, but I feel like this looks a lot better. I know there's a little bit of the echo for my glasses, just looking at my webcam and my ring light. But yeah, that'll do it for this one. Thank you all so much for listening, and I'm back on Thursday with a full game recap episode for the Penguins versus the Senators. Talk to you all then.